Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. It is 5:30 and I have received confirmation that we are streaming and you may begin your meeting.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Clerk. I see that we have quorum this evening. This session is now called to order. Welcome all council members, all staff members, and the viewing public. As we will in every meeting, I will now read the land acknowledgement. We begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people. Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. That does bring us to the approval of the agenda. And I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt, that the agenda be amended to move item 14.1, 12 Mile Creek motion, after item 4.2.1, Niagara Chapter Choate Unlimited Canada delegation. To you, Mr. Mayor, for any discussion.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Any discussion on the proposed amendment? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and this vote begins with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. That does bring us to the main motion as amended, which is be it resolved that the agenda for March 7th, 2022 regular meeting of council be adopted as amended, and this is being put forth by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Kaur. To you, Mr. Mayor, for any discussion.
Thank you. Any discussion on the agenda as amended? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. This vote begins with Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. That does bring you to the disclosure of pecuniary interest.
Thank you. After viewing the agenda, is there any council member that has a pecuniary interest or general nature thereof to declare? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have so noted. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to the presentations. Our first presentation is the COVID-19 pandemic update from Chief Limburner. I have been advised that the chief is experiencing some issues tonight with his Zoom, and he is just trying to log back on. If council is okay with it, may I suggest that we go to the CAO's update and come back to the chief's once he reconnects.
Okay, thank you. Any objections from any council members if we go to the CAO's report? Not seeing any. Mr. CAO, you have the floor.
Well, if it please council, I can actually deliver the chief's presentation since I have it electronically. And what he was going to tell council is that over the past 28 days, there have been 192 confirmed new cases of COVID in the town of Pelham. The region had 24 new confirmed cases today. 34,487 total active cases over the course of the pandemic. 1,226 deaths here, active cases and total deaths in Niagara are 519. Ontario total cases 1.14 million resolved, and total deaths of 12,574 in this province. The positivity rate is 13.4%. There are currently 7 outbreaks here in Niagara. 642 outbreaks have been resolved. And with respect to vaccinations, in Niagara, 3.3% of Niagarans only have their first dose. 84% have at least a second dose. Ontario's numbers are slightly better, so we're behind the provincial average because in Ontario, 4% of Ontarians have at least a first dose and 86% have at least a second dose. And then for the country as a whole, it is a little bit behind Ontario, but ahead of Niagara, where for the country as a whole, 3.92% have had a first dose, but 82.78% have had at least 2 doses. At the MCC, we have been operating GoVax clinics, and the Red Cross has also run a clinic. I understand both of those to have been successful. People are able to attend without appointments, and everyone who's shown up has been able to get a vaccination. And Ms. Van Ravensway has some of the data there if you're so interested, but they've been going quite well, and we have not, of course, had to dedicate part of the facility per se for that purpose, as the GoVax in particular conducts it out in the bus or goes to someone's personal vehicle if there's an accessibility issue. So it's the service has been really good, really fast, and working very well. And that would have been the Chief's presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CAO. Any questions from councillors on the report? Not seen any, Madam Clerk?
So the thing I probably would have presented upon your worship, assuming I may, is that in light of the reduced level of infections in the area, the town staff believe it's appropriate at this point in time to stop calling the EOC for its weekly meeting, and rather our control group, which is 5 staff, will continue meeting in its place on Monday mornings, and should there be important developments or the need for the larger group, we'll bring them back. But otherwise, the town is now meeting simply as its control group. So that's another indicia that we hope better things are coming, and that we're able to manage the issue with a smaller team.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CAO, for that additional information. Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. We do have a motion put forth by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that Council receive the COVID-19 update presentation from D. Cribbs, Chief Administrative Officer, for information. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Any discussion on the Limburner report as provided by this Mr. CAO? And not seeing any.
If anyone had any discussion that they wish to make with respect to the CAO's presentation, now would also be the time.
Oh, I see Councillor Wink. Go ahead, Councillor.
So just for clarification, Mr. Cribbs, was that also the combination of your report then?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, thank you. So just to make a couple of comments, there's been some indication in the local papers, Welland Tribune, that a lot of the municipalities and agencies haven't really done any particular amendments or whatever as yet. I'd like to make a motion that council direct staff to survey local municipalities to determine the current status of other municipal mask mandates and corporate policies relating to COVID-19, and that staff report back to council in open and/or closed session reports as the subject matter and materials deem appropriate, and have that back to us by April 4th, 2022.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. CAO, first, any comment on the motion?
We can handle that with respect to the timelines. That's doable by staff and relatively easy to survey. I appreciate the fact the motion allows us to determine how to produce information to you. I can, without having not written a report or done any work on that, I can see some of that being closed session. I can see some of that being open. So frankly, that gives us enough flexibility to responsibly bring you a report, should that be the will of a majority of council.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CAO. And now we will turn to council. Is there any discussion on, we need a seconder.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I would take that as an amendment, and I would be looking for a seconder, please.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? I see Councillor Olson has his hand up. Excellent. Now we will ask for discussion, Madam Clerk.
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we have a seconder, so it is a valid motion. I see Councillor Olson, you have your hand up for the debate.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since the arrangement as far as meetings and things are about to change and go to a smaller group, I think it's an appropriate moment to express my thanks or our thanks to the EOQ for a very dependable and very business-like manner in which the current crisis was on top of all the other crises that we had to deal with this year was handled. So I would like to add that to the debate tonight, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Olson, for those comments. Any debate from any other councillors on the motion before us? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is for the amendment, and our vote begins with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wenk.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That does carry. That brings you to the main motion as amended, and that is to receive the CAO's presentation for information, and that council directs staff to survey local municipalities to determine the current status of other municipal mask mandates and corporate policies relating to COVID-19, and that staff report back to council in open-ended or closed session reports as the subject matter and materials deem appropriate by April 4th, 2022. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Any discussion on this item? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. I am going to use the same mover and seconder, so that's from Councillor Wenk and seconded by Councillor Olson. And this vote begins with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wenk.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. And that does bring you to your next item on the agenda, which is a delegation. We do have the Niagara chapter of Trout Unlimited Canada here tonight. I'd ask Ms. Leach to bring our two presenters in. If council can just give us a moment.
Of course.
Trout Unlimited Canada here tonight. I'd ask Ms. Leach to bring our two presenters in. Thank you. Thank you.
Council can just give us a moment.
If the presenters can just turn off the live stream, that's the echo here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have our two presenters in. There is a PowerPoint presentation. We're happy to share our screen if I so choose. And I can also just remind the presenters that there is a 10-minute time limit, and I will ring the bell at 8 minutes and then again at 10 minutes. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, gentlemen, and thank you for presenting before council. I welcome Mr. Edel and Mr. Green. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mayor Jonkin, and to members of the council for giving us the opportunity to present to you tonight. The first step in solving this problem of the erosion at the stormwater management pond outlet at Rice Road and Highway 20. Next slide, please. So our objective tonight is that we can have allocated to the Niagara chapter of Trout Unlimited Canada a budget of $70,000 to conduct the design engineering, which is the first phase in the solution of this problem. Next slide, please. Just as an introduction, if you don't know who we are, Trout Unlimited Canada is a national organization. We are a registered Canadian charity. Our mission is to conserve, protect, and restore Canada's freshwater ecosystems. We're not a fishing club. and their cold water resources for current and future generations. Our work is guided by science and research and fueled by the unending passion of our volunteers and professional staff. Next, please. As you know, the the watershed, upper 12 Mile Creek watershed that starts in Font Hill and flows down through Thorold and into St. Catharines is the focus of the Niagara chapter. We are a conservation organization. We are made up of volunteers, and we really do care about the health of what is the last remaining cold water aquatic system in Niagara, 12 Mile Creek. 12 Mile Creek is the most significant watershed in the Niagara region. Next slide, please. So Trout Unlimited Canada Niagara chapter has been working for the last 10 years to improve both the aquatic habitat of 12 Mile Creek population that is over the last 10 years. We've done many projects. We're one pond. We've done perhaps 24 different projects, restoration projects within the watershed, including some community tree planting over a number of weekends this fall. So we work in partnership with the town of Pelham, with Niagara Region. We work with the Ministry of Resources, with Department of Fisheries and Oceans, with the Escarpment Commission, and very closely with NPCA and private landowners, because as you know, the watershed is 85% in the hands of private property owners. I'm going to turn this over to my compatriot and member of our executive, Brian Green.
Thanks, Dennis. I won't belabor too much the location of this, since you're all, I'm sure, very familiar with it. But as Dennis has pointed out, 12 Mile Creek is our concern. And it rises in Font Hill from springs and from the stormwater management pond at Rice Road. Next slide, please. And just to orient, the crossroads, as you see in the center of this slide, are Rice Road and Highway 20. The bottom left quadrant of that is the stormwater management pond, and the upper left quadrant is where the stormwater pond outlets into the headwaters of 12 Mile Creek. Next slide. And closer up, you can see very clearly the stormwater management pond flowing under Highway 20 into the headwaters of 12 Mile Creek. And that's where the problem lies. There is terrific erosion damage coming from that culvert under Highway 20 and from the stormwater management pond. It's creating quite a bit of damage, in fact, significant damage to both Pelham Cares and the Lions Club on either side of the creek. Next slide, please. That erosion has led to a great deal of property loss. The Pelham Cares has already lost one deck. They are in danger of losing another one. The property damage is quite significant, and I want to emphasize that wild property damage is certainly the concern of the Lions Club and Pelham Cares, and we have an agreement with them that we will speak on their behalf. Our concern is not the property damage so much as the terrible damage that this is doing to the headwaters of our last remaining cold water stream, 12 Mile Creek. Next slide, please. Here you can see some of the significant damage, and I'm sure you have all seen that. It's Ward 3, and I'm sure all councillors are aware of the damage that is being done there. You have, after all, allocated $70,000 for the design to correct this. Next slide, please. As I've said, our concern is not so much the property damage, but the terrible scouring and erosion which creates sediment that is conveyed downstream into the watershed, damaging aquatic habitat, eliminating many kinds of aquatic habitat, destroying vegetation, tree cover, and so on. And certainly there is flood damage downstream. The stream has been significantly impacted down through Hollow Road and will continue to be as climate change and additional development of the hard surfaces in East Font Hill continue. Our solution, I'm going to ask Dennis to present that.
Okay, so next slide will show you potentially what the solution that has been suggested by a number of experts. We really can't say for sure yet what the solution that the design engineer will come forward with, but this is the highest possible potential would be step pools, which are quite lovely, but they take the energy out of the water and basically make sure that erosion problem does not continue. Next slide, please. So we will proceed to fix this problem in 4 phases. Can we move to the next slide, please? I hope that you can hear me. So next, there are 4 phases. One would be the design engineering. It's the first one. This will tell us what the solution is, describe that solution, and provide us with a cost for that solution. What it's actually going to cost to get in there and fix it. Next phase would be the actual construction. That phase, once we get the design phase, we do the construction, get the permits. We have to go through fundraising first. Once, as we said, the design engineering will tell us what the cost of the actual fix is going to be. We then have to get funding to fund the actual construction. We do the construction, and then finally, we know that there are plans from both Pelham Cares and from the Lions Club to beautify that, potentially put some parks in there, and so make this whole section from something. Our selected design consultant is Water's Edge. Water's Edge is quite well known to the town. It has worked for the town before. They come highly recommended to us from 3 or 4 different independent sources. They own an interest in this project. They've actually come down and done a site visit with us, and they are ready to go. Next slide, please. Sorry, if we can, yeah. There will be an advisory or working group that will keep tab on every phase of the project, and that will include the town of Pelham, the NPCA, and C National, many, many large projects. So we think that by vetting every phase from the actual proposal that will come in, the formal proposal and contract with Water's Edge right through to the approval process, we will be able to kind of anticipate any problems and make sure that everybody is happy with the project as it proceeds. And the next slide, please. So just to say that we can have a proposal, a formal proposal and pro forma contract for the design engineering phase in our hands within the next month of March. And that would then be vetted by both the town and, as I said, the advisory committee, which would include the town, ourselves, TUC National, and the NPCA. So we're ready to go.
Okay. Dennis, is that the end of your presentation?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
There.
thank you. Before I go to council, perhaps Mr. CAO, any comments from you on this proposal, perhaps?
The item before council is one of significant community interest, and various elected officials have championed it on various occasions over the past year. It's the challenge corporately is, and I certainly want to applaud Trout Unlimited for its efforts thus far and the presentation. You will recall that staff have reported on this item on multiple occasions, and that there are reports and public documents indicating that erosion was a pre-existing condition, and it is not settled or given what the cause of the erosion is. That's not an item we need to debate this evening, or that needs to affect council's decision on whether it grants the request here, which is for the amount of funding council had already set aside in hopes of learning more about the project and determining a potential technical solution to the erosion. There's no doubt that erosion's occurring. It's just not settled as to what the cause of the erosion may be. And I don't think that particularly matters relative to fixing the problem, because we know that there's a real problem with erosion. But I do want to reemphasize that that is not a settled point. Nevertheless, the town at this point in time does not own any of these lands, so it would be at best a very difficult municipal project. However, there's a potential community champion and environmental champion here, which seems to have the capacity to go forward with the project if such is the will of council. And those monies could form the sort of a seed funding, if you will, to get started and to get going. And I think TUC has already indicated that there'll be some need for fundraising, and I suspect that owing to the fact that they are not government, they may well have considerable success in a number of endeavors in which the town would not. To that end, I think that's the basic nature of the ask and the argument in favor of support. Subject to questions. Staff are capable, Mr. Marr can speak to this more directly. His department, and then he himself personally, has become reasonably familiar with the project, if not very much so, do have the capacity to review and comment upon the ultimately the proposed engineering solutions. So we will have that sort of interaction, and it's not about level of control. We won't be the ones in the driver's seat. This is actually, we're talking about doing works on private lands, to reiterate. But I think in conjunction with both Trout Unlimited and the Conservation Authority, there's enough skill and knowledge present in the community to, one would expect, to do a very good job with this, that hopefully will benefit both the environment, the Lions Park, and the food bank. Subject to questions, I think that's a fair survey of the overall staff position.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CA, for that background. I will turn to Councillor Wink. This is your motion. Any comments before I open it up to the council?
Sorry, through you,
Oh,
Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry.
If I may so, right now, the motion that's on the floor is with respect to the delegation, and it's simply to receive the delegation for information. Should council have questions of our delegates, this would be the time. Immediately preceding this would be Councillor Wink's motion.
Okay, sorry about that, Councillor. I was rushing things. So let's go back to the delegation's presentation. Is there any questions on the presentation that any councillor would like to address to the presenters? And I see Councillor Corr has his hand up.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the delegation, and thank you very much for a great presentation. The property, there's a catch basin, if I'm not mistaken, on the property line of Thorold and Pelham, just south of the tracks. Has anybody looked at that? The last time I visited the resident there, he was trying to get rid of all the silt that was built up over a number of years, and he was down to about 4 feet. I just wondered if anybody looked at that, and he mentioned that since he started to clean the catch basin, the overflow in his backyard really diminished. I just Have you guys looked at that?
Perhaps before I go to the presenters, maybe Director of Public Works, Mr. Mario, have you got any comments on that catch basin or not?
To you, Mr. Mayor, engineering staff have not looked in detail into that catch basin and that crossing of the old railway line, but we are aware of it, and we do understand that that is backing up, silting in, and causing extensive flooding prior to that culvert, which deposits a large amount of silt in that area. So this was something that staff were going to consider and look at as part of our design RFP that was recently let out. So we are aware of the situation. I don't have much more details than that right now.
Okay, thank you. Then I will ask either of the
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Councillor, I will ask, let me ask the delegates to see if they've, are aware of it, and have you inspected it? Either Dennis or Brian, want to comment on that?
The only thing I would say, Mr. Mayor, is that the amount of sedimentation going down through there is so significant that a catch basin is at best a stopgap. As has been recorded, we have measured in one storm event, scouring out of the bottom of that stream at 70 centimeters of sand and soil being washed away in one storm event. That's such a significant amount of sediment that a catch basin is at best stopgap, and perhaps, I'm no engineer, but it could perhaps be doing more damage than help.
Thank you. Back to you, Councillor.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Jason. Would we not have to ask the cooperation from the town of Thorold, because that catch basin is in Thorold?
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if indeed the catch basin is in Thorold, yes, we would be looking at cooperating with the city on any improvements that are made with that inlet structure and culvert.
Councillor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on the presentation? Councillor Hildebrand?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the presenters. I appreciate it, because we realize that this area is a significant problem. The Water's Edge has agreed to provide the engineering plan for, I believe, the $70,000. I believe that's what they're saying. Does that mean we get a complete design, bring the project to tender with permits, applicable permits, ready for construction? Is that what the $70,000 pays for?
Dennis?
My understanding,
Oh,
excuse me, sorry. Excuse me, Mayor.
no, go ahead.
Yes, my
Go ahead,
understanding
Dennis.
is that yes, my understanding is what we will receive from Water's Edge at the completion of this project is a tender-ready design, and that engineering papers that we get with it, the plans that we get with it, will then be the basis for applying for permits. So we would then take those plans and apply for the necessary permits, which could take anywhere, as you know, with the Escarpment Commission, could take anywhere from 6 months to 12 months. But working closely, as I said, with an advisory group, including the NPCA, we should be able to guide that design so that it will conform to all the necessary parameters of approvals and expedite the approval process. But no, at the end of the day, we will not get the approvals, but we would expect to go through the process of getting the approvals. But the first step is to find out what exactly the fix will look like and what it will cost to fix it.
Councillor?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions to the presenters? Councillor Olson?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to our presenters. Trout Unlimited is a big part of our green culture in the town of Pelham, and they're masters of working with other people and landowners and other participants, and they have allies in the service clubs and the youth and the schools. And I'm looking to the end result being well, quite an attractive area for our town. I know the Pelham Cares and the Lions Club and the Lionettes are in agreement that they would like to see an area where people can go and enjoy the another part of our community. And with the need for parks that we have, I think this could be something of great attraction and public interest for a lot of the people in our town. So I'll be supporting the motion myself. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions on the presentation? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that Council receive the delegation from the Niagara chapter of Trout Unlimited Canada for information. Any other discussion, Mr. Mayor?
Any other discussion on the presentation? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. This vote begins with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. That does bring us to our next item on the agenda, which is Councillor Wink's motion regarding the 12 Mile Creek. If the councillor would like to read into the record, that would certainly be acceptable. And unless council objects, our presenters could stay in. I know it's a relevant topic to them as observers if they so wish, or would council like us to put them back into the waiting room?
Any objections if the presenters stay? I don't see any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. They'll be staying as observers. To you, Councillor Wink, should you wish to read your motion into the record?
Yes, I will. Whereas the 12 Mile Creek is a significant environmental asset to the town of Pelham and neighboring communities, and whereas council directed staff on April 19th, 2021 to issue a request for proposal to undertake a design building initiative for erosion mitigation and the rehabilitation of the headwaters of the 12 Mile Creek. And whereas on July 26, 2021, Council approved $70,000 to complete the engineering and detailed design for the project. And whereas the design and completion of the project to identify, remediate, and resolve the erosion taking place at the stormwater outlet from the stormwater management facility located at Rice Road and Highway 20 will ensure that the negative impacts to the 12 Mile Creek and adjacent properties due to erosion is mitigated. And whereas staff were not able to award the detailed engineering assignment for the erosion mitigation and rehabilitation project due to the budget restriction of $70,000. And whereas Niagara Chapter Trout Unlimited Canada has expressed interest in leading the project in partnership with the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, the town of Pelham, and private stakeholders. And whereas Niagara Chapter Trout Unlimited Canada has engaged the services of Water's Edge Environmental Solutions team to provide the required engineering services and detailed design at a total value not exceeding $70,000. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the town of Pelham Council support the procurement of engineering services by Niagara Chapter Trout Unlimited Canada in the amount not to exceed $70,000 to complete the review and design engineering plan to identify and evaluate the best practice to address the erosion problem present at the headwaters of 12 Mile Creek, and that staff be authorized and directed to provide funds from the road reserve.
Thank you, Councillor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that motion is being presented by Councillor Wink and seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt, and Council may discuss.
Okay, thank you. And now, Councillor Wink, as you're the presenter of the motion, do you have any comments?
Yeah, so we've been dealing with this issue for quite some time, and we're all aware that we put out an RFP, the town on its own, to get the engineering done, and the engineering costs were considerably higher. The fact that this is a great opportunity for us to partner with Trout Unlimited and their resources to be able to A, do the engineering, but B, to help raise money to get this project to completion and mitigate the problem. This seems like a win-win for everybody, and I'd like to reiterate to the presenters of the previous presentation their thanks for the presentation, and further thanks to your ongoing efforts going forward on this much needed project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Hildebrand, you are the seconder of the motion. Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the considerations I had when I supported this motion was the fact that right now the pond is only operating at 50% or less capacity because the development area where the influx of water is coming into the pond hasn't even reached there. So the erosion and the issues we're having is only a partial fact of what we're going to encounter in the future, because soon that land is going to be paved over, we're going to get buildings, and we're going to get that pond working at 100% capacity. So something had to be done. The fact that Trout Unlimited is providing complete design to bring the project to tender and is going to be working to obtain the permits on our behalf, and we're committing $70,000 to the project. That is a great investment, I think, on our council's and our town's behalf. So thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you, Councillor Hildebrand. I now open up to the rest of council, comments, and I see Councillor Hahn.
Yes, thank you, through the mayor. So am I to understand, though, that as far as the $70,000 taxpayers' money, then we are essentially, by agreeing to this motion, giving it directly then to Trout Unlimited, which is a special interest group, versus giving it to the Water's Edge, who is the engineering consultant? Is that the understanding?
Councillor Brian or Dennis, would you like to comment on that?
I think that's a fair assessment. We have acted as honest brokers here. When the town was unable to reach an agreement with a design firm, we stepped in and took it upon ourselves to locate somebody who we thought would be appropriate and who apparently can bring it in for the required amount, or perhaps even under, who knows. So we continue to be involved and hope to continue to be involved through the process. As several of the councillors have pointed out, our involvement will not end with presenting council with a design, but we'll also be very heavily involved in fundraising and brokering agreements with private enterprise to bring this to a completion. Thank you, Brian. Councillor?
Yes, I appreciate all your efforts in this endeavor, most certainly. And clearly there is an issue, there's no doubt about that. But you know, back in 2021, I said then, and I still believe that it's important to determine why this system failed at the site in the first place. Is it an engineering design failure? Is it a construction failure? And then determine what body could be held responsible, rather than just at the outset using taxpayers' money for a supposed solution without knowing the cause of the problem in the first place. So I still, you know, maintain that thinking. I think it's important to keep in mind that the site is on private land, which our CAO has reiterated. It's not on town-owned land. However, we've got the motion that we agreed to spend upwards of $70,000 to have an engineering report. If this will give us an engineering report from Water's Edge, so be it. But I would hope that includes the complete design and all the drawings, not in addition drawings on top of that. If this design phase is the portion that the town is set on paying for, then I would expect that there won't be a financial ask again in the future for the construction phase of this. Because that, of course, that's the big dollar factor. That's in the hundreds of thousands to actually do the construction work. So if the town's portion is, call it seed money, to at least get the design, the drawings, permits, so that it can go to tender and you can find a construction company to do the work, and then you're going to raise money to actually get that portion of the construction done, then I would support this. But I can't support, coming back and asking for more money from the town to actually do the construction work. Because again, this is on private land, and I think this is a bit of a slippery slope, pun intended, in that, we can't pick and choose which projects the town should be paying for when it's on town property. So I think we have to be cognizant of the fact this isn't on town property. However, recognizing it is something that stems from the stormwater pond on the other side of the road. And this is why I've always kind of held thinking that the region should be ponying up. But nonetheless, that's my 2 cents for what it's worth. But I do hope this includes the drawings, and that the town won't be asked at a later date for additional monies.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other comments on the motion before us? Not seeing any, then I will turn to the clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. This vote begins with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Actually, I'd like my 2 questions answered before I provide an answer, please.
Oh, I apologize.
Okay, I thought you were just putting in your 2 cents. Could you reiterate the 2 questions, please?
The 2 questions were that we won't be asked at a later date for more money for the construction phase, and also 2, that this will include the full design and drawings.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Mr. Green or Dennis. Either one of you would like to attempt to answer those questions? Oh,
I think the question that refers to us is whether or not this will be, you will have the drawings as part of the deliverables. My understanding is that yes, that this will be a tender-ready design, so it'll be ready to basically hand over to whatever contracting company.
You're breaking up, Mr. Adele.
Will we come back right now to do fundraising? All right, Brian, go ahead.
Go ahead, Brian.
I think Dennis has answered the first question. We certainly anticipate the design will be complete with all drawings and whatever is necessary to go to tender for the actual construction. As to whether this is the last ask to the town remains to be seen. Certainly, the town's $70,000 or less that is going into the design phase is a significant amount of money, and would be taken into account should there be responsibility assigned for the damage that's being done to the properties downstream. Certainly, the region should be involved. I wouldn't be surprised to see Thorold involved in mitigating what has been a problem. And the CAO was very clear on not assigning blame, but as a private citizen, I don't have those same restrictions. This has been an issue from day one. And yes, somebody is responsible for a poor design somewhere. Whether it's the culvert, whether it's the stormwater management pond, whatever it is, the design is inadequate. What we are doing with a step pool solution, if that indeed is the design solution, is mitigating a problem that is a design problem. There is no doubt about that. Where the responsibility lies and where the financial responsibility should lie remains to be seen. It's our intention not to assign blame, but to fix the problem We will certainly try to do so for the most cost-effective way that we can. Once we see the design, we can then, at that point, start looking for monies to complete the construction. We have the cooperation of several private businesses who have shown very strong interest in helping us with this, either in cash or in kind. It's a very attractive project, frankly, for a private business because it's so visible and so necessary, as has been observed by several councillors. So raising the money should not be an enormous problem. And we certainly would hope not to have to come knocking at council's door, but we can make no guarantees that that will not happen.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Back to you, Councillor.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate the response. Yes, if I support this 70K going through to you, then to basically pay for Water's Edge, then I'm just saying at this point in time, I won't be supporting any more funds in the future, but I will support this now. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, comments on the motion? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will restart the motion with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry.
Okay. One last thank you to the presenters tonight, and good luck with Water's Edge, and we look forward to the design coming back. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll just ask Ms. Leach to remove our presenters from the meeting. Thank you. To you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to our next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes, and I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. 1. Special Council 02/2022, Special Council February 22nd, 2022, and RC-04-2022, Regular Council February 22nd, 2022. Mr. Mayor, I'd ask that you call for any errors or omissions.
Okay, thank you. Is any errors or omissions that any councillors? Oh, I see Councillor Wink.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. 5.2, the regular council minutes. There's an error on item 7, might be typographical or whatever, but it was overlooked. But for the record, I'd like to get it straightened out. It indicated that I requested 8.5.2 to be lifted. It should be 8.5.3.
Thank you. I've noted that, and I will make that change. I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other omissions? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. To you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to item 7 on the agenda. This is the request to lift any consent agenda items. As council knows, you only have to lift an item if you wish to amend the resolution being presented. If you simply wish just to comment on the item, there's no need to lift the item. To you, Mr. Mayor, to see if any councillors wish to lift any items.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there any items that any member of council would like to lift at this time? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that the consent agenda items as listed on the March 7th, 2022 council agenda be received and the recommendations therein be approved. To you, Mr. Mayor, council may now discuss the items. If you wish to do it by category, the first category is presentations of recommendations arising from COW or PNP.
Excellent. Any debate, discussion on this one? See Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. 8.3.3, Tomori Boulevard. Lot 30 is the outlier in terms of the presentation that we've been giving. Essentially, the back fence on the scale of drawings that I received from the town looks like it interfaces with the town road easement, which is almost a vertical bank coming off Hay Street. What I'd like a comment from the Director of Planning or Public Works is the fact that since the design acceptance is based on a 5-year event, what assurance do we have that the future events like July the 17th, 21, which Welland recorded 108 millimeters of rain in 14 hours, which is equated to a 50-year event, or a similar event that we had in town on July the 8th, 2013, or the 2005 event where there was a 100-year event, which was the remnants of Hurricane Katrina in area, will not cause the bank failure. Because I said the report that we have says the engineer is approving it based on a 5-year event. Can one of the directors please address my question?
I will direct this to Director of Planning, Ms. Weens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. So the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks set the standards on which you design stormwater management systems. So their design standard is a 5-year storm event, and that's used, across Ontario. So the system is designed to, certainly carry the stormwater management system is designed for that storm event. The storm pond is designed for a 100-year storm and can retain water for those types of events, and allows for the storage of storm water and the release of water at a pre-development flow rate. With respect to the bank, all structures will be set back from the top of bank, from the stable top of slope, and they will be set back a minimum of 7.5 meters. It's when you get buildings or structures that are placed within that setback that you tend to put pressure on the slope. And so it's critical to maintain the 7.5 meter setback to maintain the slope stability. There's no evidence of any slumping of that slope. It is fairly stable, and the slope is regulated by the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, and they've expressed no concern with the slope stability. So we are confident that that slope at the rear of 30 Filmori is stable.
Councillor?
Thank you. So what you're saying really is the fact that we won't have a problem with the slope, so we don't have to be concerned about spending any money ensuring that slope will not deteriorate.
Yeah, we don't believe that there's an issue with that slope. And again, the bylaw will not allow for any structures within that 7.5 meter setback. And it's when you allow for development and encroachment of structures within that setback area, that's what causes pressure on the slope and could cause a slope to fail.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, comments on 8.3.3? Not seeing any there. Councillor Wink, do you have another one? Oh, you're on mute, sir.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. 8.3.5, just like to make a couple of comments. I'd like to thank Planning Department staff for all the work that they've done on this draft zoning bylaw amendments. There's obviously an awful lot of work. As I was reading through, as I'm sitting in the back of my mind, what's changed and what are the changes? And I would ask that that staff provide council and the public the changes or amendments that are being made to the zoning bylaw. I really don't want to go through all the bylaws on my own, trying to figure out what's new and what's not. So I'm just asking staff for an update on any changes or amendments to the zoning bylaws. So thank you.
Ms. Weens, comments on that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. We can certainly put together a summary and identify kind of the, what's changed from the original bylaw to this bylaw. And there are certainly some new things that are added that weren't in the existing bylaw, and different, some zone categories with respect to the East Fonthill area. But there are also some new zones with respect to environmental protection. Our current bylaw does not provide for any zone categories for that. So there is quite a bit of change, and we can certainly summarize that and put that together for council for your information. It is something that we will be doing anyway in terms of going out to the public with that as well. So we can certainly make that available to council, and happy to do so.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Weens. Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Back to the bank question again. The bank was 7.5 meters on item 8.3.3. In your revised zoning amendments, the bank is now 5 meters. Question.
Yes, and I think that's an error. We will have to correct that because I believe it's supposed to be 7.5 meters in the zoning bylaw, and I'm sure the Conservation Authority will pick up on that.
Okay. Does the region also have to approve these draft zoning amendments?
Mr. Mayor, through you, if I may, the region and the Conservation Authority will provide comments on it, but they are not the approval authority. It is the town that is the approval authority. Our bylaws are required to certainly comply with the regional OP, and if there is something that is, blatantly wrong or a non-compliance, we'll hear from the region about that, and we'll need to make adjustments to the bylaw before council adopts it. And so, yeah, we are circulating the bylaw to the agencies as well. So they have a 45-day period in which to comment. It's also during that time, we're going to be doing some open houses, both virtual and in person, to try to get public input, and as well as having the bylaw posted on our Engaging Pelham web page and getting public input through that process as well. So we're about to embark on a pretty extensive public consultation process with agencies and with the community and the broader public. And we're happy to receive comments and questions from council as well, because we want to make sure that when we come forward with a final draft, that it is something that council is comfortable with.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Weens. I'm concerned about what the timeline is for having this passed, as there's nothing in there to address any changes to our parking bylaw. And I think at the last meeting, you said that the report would be on your desk the following Monday. So I'm wondering when council will get that report and when council will have the opportunity to decide whether we're satisfied with what has been and if we need to make changes, because there's no changes that I can see in the parking in the new bylaw.
Ms. Weens.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly did receive a copy of the report last week. I provided feedback to the consultants and expecting to receive a final copy this week. And we expect that we'll be presenting that to council at a meeting in April, and you'll have the opportunity to review the parking study as well as the findings around that with the consultants at a future meeting date, and we're looking at an April date.
Councillor Stewart?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hahn?
Yes, through the mayor to Director Weens. With regards to that, so further to Councillor Stewart's question, so once that parking study then is reviewed by council, it's brought in April, as you said, what are the next steps then? Because I remember when we initially talked about this almost 2 years ago, when we endeavored to take on a parking study, there were several steps that had to happen before it could actually become official or amended in any real way. So what are those next steps then?
Ms. Weens?
Mr. Mayor, through you, do you mean with respect to the parking study or the zoning bylaw?
So the parking study, which would then, depending on how it would change, would amend what we've, as Councillor Stewart just alluded to, it's remaining the same in what we've just been provided in the draft copy, right? So if there's going to be changes, we want to make sure we capture those changes, and then when it goes out to the public has an opportunity to comment, and then going through the proper procedures and protocols, then it becomes an official piece of work, an official bylaw. So what are those changes, I guess, and steps that have to take place, and what's the time frame on those?
Ms.
So,
Weens?
Mr. Mayor, through you, the consultants will certainly present their parking study. They have summarized some of the comparisons of parking in other municipalities across Niagara, so you will receive that information. And if you feel that there needs to be change to the parking standards for the town of Pelham, then you can certainly pass a motion and ask that those changes be incorporated into the new zoning bylaw. We're not expecting that we will be bringing you the new zoning bylaw in April. There will be time to certainly review the bylaw, review the parking analysis that was done by the consultants, and for council to make informed decisions.
Okay, thank you. And I have one further question. So in probably towards the latter half of the draft document, there's quite a lengthy section for exceptions. I'm just wondering how did that come about? So in other words, how did you determine the exceptions to various properties, which are named properties, right? A particular address is able to continue being this type of business or that. How do you go about deciphering that? Is obviously not every area is going to have an exception. There's just very random. So I'm just wondering, how did that come to be, and how do you identify those addresses?
Ms. Weens?
So, Mr. Mayor, through you, those exceptions are existing bylaw amendments that were approved by council since 1987. So we're carrying forward a number of those that have been approved over the years, and continue to exist and are relevant today. There are some exceptions that we didn't carry forward if they were for a specific use that has ceased, and that new use wouldn't comply with the official plan or for provincial policies, and we haven't carried that exception forward. But if it's an existing use or and it continues to be relevant and compliance with provincial policies and the regional and our town official plan, then we carry those exceptions forward and make sure that those previous approvals, are not lost.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because I envision that when the public has an opportunity to view this, they may go, oh, wow, geez, we need to apply now. We've been forgotten about. We need to go through the proper protocol and procedure now. So this could make a bit of a makes work project, let's call it. So
well, it can, and but those are existing properties that did have zoning bylaw amendments in the past, and so those ones did go through processes in the past.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? I see Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Weens. I know I looked at those and I'm like, what are they? So I did look up a number of them, and they were, there was the Net Campground, there was the Comfort Maple, there was the Sawmill Golf Course. They were all things that we're familiar with. So possibly when the document goes to the public, for people to see, and if those things were listed out, it would make it a lot easier for the public to understand what and where the exceptions are. It's just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments on 8.35? Not seeing any. Madam Clerk, what's the next section?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the next section is for any other staff reports. Council has already started to discuss those. If there are any other reports that are staff reports or correspondence that council wishes to discuss, now would be the time.
Okay. Any other items that council would like to comment on? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, this is to receive the consent.
Madam Clerk, your mic's not really picking you up.
I apologize. Thank you very much. If that concludes the consent agenda, the motion put on the floor is to receive all of those items therein contained, and this vote begins with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt. Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. Mr. Mayor, that brings you to your first item, which is a staff report. And I have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2022-0057, 2022 LDD Moth Management Program for information, and that the blocks identified in the report be sprayed for the LDD moth in 2022, and that council consider repealing and replacing bylaw number 4334 2021 with bylaw number 4433 2022 to allow for the implementation of the aerial spray program in 2022, and that council approve the use of Zimmer Air Services to conduct the 2022 aerial spray program. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Council, any discussion on 10.2 plus 10.1? That's just the aerial spraying of the moth. Any comments? I see Councilor Wink.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Public Works. Looking at Appendix A, it is encouraging that the spray program is not concentrated on the urban areas of Fonthill and Fenwick and is expanding to the rural areas. Obviously, past spray programs are working. My question is on the overview of Appendix A. There's an area shown as severe in the northeast area of Fenwick, which is shown as severe but is not being sprayed. Can you please comment why that's not being sprayed at this time?
Go ahead, Mr. Mark.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'll defer a more specific answer to the Manager of Public Works, Ryan. He's been dealing directly with our consultant on the formulation of these spray plots. But the short answer would be budget restrictions. So that area was removed due to budgetary reasons. Ryan may have another reason why that was chosen to be removed from the program.
Mr. Cook?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. There's a number of locations where that were identified as severe, but unfortunately, we're just not able to spray all of them. That particular plot, I'm not exactly familiar with. I know there was a number of areas that were previously sprayed as well. So although we think there might be severe defoliation in that area due to the spraying in the last few years, I think it might not be as bad as some of the other areas. So really wanted to concentrate on places that we hadn't sprayed previously. So that's why some locations did unfortunately not make it into the program.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments on the spray program? Not seeing any. Just before the meeting tonight, I did contact the local business who is also offering to do a spray program, and they informed me that they didn't get as many residents signed up as they were anticipating, but they did, in fact, get a number to go ahead with the program. So at least they did offer an alternative besides the town's program. Excellent. Any other comments? Not seen any. Oh, Mr. Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to add on your previous comment, we will be sharing our spray program with the other service providers so that there isn't an overlap. So people that have signed up with the private companies, they'll know soon what our plan is, and they can adjust their plans accordingly.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Mr. Mark. I turn to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I did see Councillor Hahn had her hand up.
Councillor Hahn?
Councillor Hahn.
Oh, Councillor Hahn, did you?
Yes, I did actually, but Director Marr just actually spoke to what I was going to ask. But further to that, with regards to Thorold and the areas around the 12 Mile Creek and Short Hills and all that, do we know what their plans are? I know it's a provincial park and such, but are we kind of abreast of what's happening there and the timing and who they're using and that information?
I'm sorry. Director Marr, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's a good question. I know Ryan again has been in contact with our consultant and our aerial applicator, so I'll defer this question to him, see if he has any information.
Okay, Mr. Cook, any information on what other municipalities are doing? I personally don't think they do spray, but have you heard of any other information?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, not specifically. I do know the MPCA has provided some spray on some of their lands at Niagara Parks out towards Niagara Falls. We did have an awful lot of interest with our neighboring municipalities on how we operate our program and how we chose plots and who we used and what we did. I'm not aware of anyone actually providing the same level of spraying or the same program that we are in the area.
Thank you. Councillor Hahn?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just didn't figure the gypsy moth just only goes and hits a glass ceiling or wall. It continues on. So whether it's St. Catharines or Thorold or Wainfleet or even Port Colborne area, it's going to continue to spread. So it's not just limited to Pelham. So I just made the assumption that neighboring communities would also have some sort of measures in place. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Not seeing anything. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. That brings you to your next staff report, and I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Hildebrandt, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2022-0062 Proposal 2022 Municipal Grant Allocation for Information, and that Council approve the 2022 municipal grant allocations of $11,900 for waived facility fees, $30,100 cash allocations, and $5,416 estimated in-kind labor requests as outlined in the 2022 Municipal Grant Allocation Summary. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any discussion on the proposed 2022 municipal grant allocations? Any councillor have any questions or make a statement? Not seen any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. That does bring us to our presentation and consideration of bylaws, and I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt. Be it resolved that Council for the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do read a first, second, and third time and do pass it. And that the mayor and clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. 1. Bylaw number 4430, 2022, being a bylaw to remove the holding age provision executed by bylaw number 3868, 2017 for the lands located on the south side of Welland Road, east of Church Street, municipally known as 788 Welland Road. This is file number AM 0718. Bylaw number 4431, 2022, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 4023, 2018, as amended respecting development charges. 3. Bylaw number 4432, 2022, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into agreement with the Corporation of the Town of Lincoln in order to establish a Union Public Library. 4. Bylaw number 4433, 2022, being a bylaw authorizing the implementation of a 2022 spray program respecting the LDD moth and to replace and repeal bylaw number 4334, 2021. 5. Bylaw number 4434, 2022, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 4423, 2022, authorizing the mayor and clerk to enter into a cost-sharing agreement with the regional municipality of Niagara for the Quaker Road reconstruction project by repealing and replacing Schedule A with Schedule A appended hereto. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Any discussion on any of these 5 bylaws just read by the clerk? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This begins with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. To you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to our next item, which is a resolution to move in camera. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in order to consider a matter under section 239(2) of the Municipal Act as follows. B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, and D, labor relations or employee negotiations, one item committee appointment. F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. I, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or negotiations of a person, group of persons, or organizations. J, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, or financial information that belongs to the municipality or local board and has monetary value or potential monetary value. K, a position, plan, criteria, procedure, or instructions to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on or by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. One item procurement process. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, any discussion on the motion to move in camera? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. If council can just give me a moment to stop the recording and the live streaming, that would be appreciated.
Of course.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I do have confirmation that we are live streaming, and I do have a motion put forth from Councillor Hildebrandt, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that Council adjourn the in-camera session and that Council do now rise with report. To you, Mr. Mayor, for any discussion.
Any discussion on rising? Do not see any hands.
Thank you. I will start this vote with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn. Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion does carry. To you, Mr. Mayor, I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that Council receive the Pelham Summerfest Committee application for Paul DeVitis, and that Council hereby appoint Paul DeVitis to the Summerfest Committee, and that the appointment bylaw be presented to the next regular meeting of Council being March 21, 2022. To you, Mr. Mayor, for any discussion.
Okay. Council have any further discussion on this applicant? Not seeing any.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The vote begins with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That does carry. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt. Be it resolved that the Chief Administrative Officer is and is hereby authorized to undertake the directions provided in the in-camera meeting of March 7th, 2022. To you, Mr. Mayor, for any discussion.
Any further discussion? Not seeing any.
Thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a motion put forth by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that the following bylaw be ready first, second, and third time and passed, being bylaw number 4435/2022, to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of Council of the Town of Pelham at its regular meeting held on the 7th day of March 2022. To you, Mr. Mayor, for any discussion.
Any further discussion on this bylaw? Not seeing any.
Thank you. This vote begins with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that this regular meeting of council be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for March 21st, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. To you, Mr. Mayor, for any discussion.
Any discussion? Not seeing any.
Thank you. This vote begins with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. It is 7:18, and you can gavel out your meeting.
Have a good evening, councilors and staff.
Good night, all.
Good night, folks.